From Overwhelming Studios in Moscow, Idaho, we're bringing you the financial conditions of Idaho agriculture in the year 2021. I am Dr. Garth Taylor, an economist for the University of Idaho. My co-authors are Dr. Rita and Dr. Ben Eborn, who quit. Idaho is a small state with big ag. We're only a state about the size of the economy about Rhode Island, the smallest state in the Union. Yet we're the fifth largest ag state in the United States, just behind South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa. Within the state, we measure bigness by looking at the multiplier effects, how much ripple effects agribusiness, both processing and production agriculture, make in the state's economy. We don't get rich by suing each other, growing each other's food, or doing each other's laundry. We get rich by bringing in new money, exports within the economy that circulate around in the Idaho economy. When you account those multiplier effects of the exports from agribusiness, about 17% of the sales in the state of Idaho is from agribusiness. In contrast, high-tech manufacturing is about 7%, jobs about 12%, and GDP about 12.5%. GDP is the largest measure of prosperity and wealth in the state. I like to call it value added. It's a much more accurate, vivid picture of what it means to the state. This year, in 2020, we had the third largest increase in farm gate cash receipts, up over $8 billion. Just not very much over 2019. I want you to notice these bar charts. Milk, 37% of cash receipts. Beef, 19%. And other livestock, your sheep and your trout and other things like that, 2%. In other words, what we're getting is far bigger, far more than 50% is due to livestock. Now, when you start potato waste, silage, hay, beet pulp, and all of those other crops that go to support the livestock industry, Ben calculates maybe 75% of the total cash receipts in the state of Idaho are either from livestock or to support livestock. For example, it takes about 3/4 of an acre of forage to support one dairy cow in the herd, and we have well over 600,000 dairy cows in the state of Idaho. In 2020, livestock was down about 1%, and crop production was up about 4%. Wheat was up 23%. We're getting really strong wheat prices. It's up, the latest I saw, it was over $11 a bushel. Wow. Just think about that a couple years ago. Now, let's talk about, I always like to compare how Idaho's doing with some other comparison, the United States or some other. And how I do that is I start indexing. I start everybody out at the same spot at 1, and then I let them grow so I can look at just the growth, not the actual amounts. And always in these graphs like this, I always put Idaho green because it's green. And I put the U.S. as red, as Republican. And then in this graph, you can see that Idaho is grown by 60% since 1997, and compared to 10% with the United States. A mere 10% in, 30 years? In real dollar terms, that's all they've grown in the United States. But what's propelling Idaho is milk. That's 210% that milk has grown in real dollar terms since 1997. We're adding herd at approximately about 15 to 20,000 cows per year since 1997, and up to and the productivity of those cows is growing tremendously. Where is this great agricultural prosperity going to? Well, it's certainly Garth is not going to eat anymore, shouldn't eat anymore. About 27% of Idaho's total foreign exports are food and agricultural exports. And last year we broke a record in agricultural exports. We're getting close to $1 billion worth of exports from agriculture in the state of Idaho. Nearly half of our exports go to Canada or Mexico. In the United States, China's our largest trading partner. Not so in Idaho. That's third, a very distant third. And the things that we can export are your dairy, potatoes, and your wheat. We export a lot of dry powdered milk from the state of Idaho. Let's turn attention a little bit to net farm income, which was up 2% in 2020 to $2.6 billion. It's a record high. And you can see the total expenses were up about 14%. They're eating us up, and it's getting worse. Right now, you can't buy fertilizer is out the ceiling. Diesel's expensive, and you can't even get contracts for fertilizer now. This is going to get really one of the issues that we're going to have to watch in the future. Another source of revenue for farmers in the past has been government payments, especially in 2020. You see that purple bar? That is the Trump COVID payments. And the little blue bar, turquoise payment is the oops, we messed up with China's exports, and that's Trump's dollars to the exports. And that's almost gone away in 2020. And those two large bars, which were up close to $900 million in the state of Idaho, will disappear in 2021. Ben will have those numbers to us in a few more days. And comparing our Idaho's real income, inflation-adjusted income, you can see Idaho has grown 150% since 1997, and the United States has grown a mere 20%. That is all in the 20, 30 years that the statistics take place. It's just, Idaho is outstripping the United States in the growth of their farm income by far. Let's turn attention to a little bit of a broader macro instead of the farm sector itself. I always like to put the farm sector back into the terms of GDP, value added. And what this graph shows is that green is farming, Idaho farming, red is U.S. farming in GDP, and blue is Idaho farm processing, the food manufacturers, the Chobanis. Okay, what you see right here, that Idaho has grown by 200%, 97 in GDP, farm GDP. That's not including processing. That's just farm GDP. The state has grown 90% since 1997. And finally, in the last few years, processing is starting to take off a little bit, and it's grown 60%. In the last few years, since 2016, really a turnaround in the way processing. You see a lot of, in the 2004, we were way below, processing was way below the index. In other words, processing was shrinking. That's the loss of a lot of the kill plants that were in southern Idaho. And the loss of, it was in that period right now where we lost a lot of potato processing to Canada that left the state in that period of time. I want to do one last comparison of GDP, and that's to compare us with our sister states of Washington and Oregon. And you can see from the graph here that green is always Idaho, purple is Washington, that's UW's colors, and then I got the orange, that's Washington State, the Beavers. So we can't have two greens in there for University of Oregon. So you can see from that picture right there that that Idaho has grown by about 200%. It's about the same as Washington. Washington's been below Idaho throughout most of those years. It's just in the last few years it's grown up to meet Idaho. And you can see that that Oregon's about a third less than that, 90% of that's growing. I attribute this to the fact that the promotion and the farmer-friendly atmosphere that we've created in Idaho. You cannot read the Capital Press and not find a story in Oregon bashing big ag or industrial ag or something like that in Oregon. It's a really anti-farm atmosphere that they have in Oregon. Also, what you're again is seeing the growth of the dairy industry in Idaho. That growth is you can't add more acres of farmland in Oregon and Washington without building more acres out in the Pacific Ocean, all the way to China, I guess. Farmland all the way to China. But you can add productivity in cows and the number of cows. And this is what's been happening in Idaho, is we've been adding the productivity. GDP is essentially, will always come back to measuring productivity and technological change. And so it will do that. It also, Dr. Rita, measures economies of scale. What's the return to scale is the technology and stuff like that, what's going on with that. And this is what Idaho's been growing. Big dairies and lots of cows and very productive dairy farms. I know this last slide, I give up. I don't know how else to portray it. Idaho is big, ag is big, it's growing, but it is volatile. You notice from this one is total GDP in this quarter-to-quarter change in Idaho's GDP. You notice they're all little teeny red bars, right? And then use ag, and it's big, huge swings quarter-to-quarter in Idaho ag. That's the first thing you'll notice, that Idaho agriculture in GDP is a lot more volatile than the state's economy. You know, I cut it off at 20%, but it's unimaginable that Idaho's economy would be shrinking or growing by 20% in a quarter, but it happens all the time in agriculture. And you notice, if you go across here, you'll see the two recessions that we had here, the Great Recession and the COVID recession. Recessions are usually defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. For the COVID, they revised that so it's only 1 quarter. But if you go across there, you can see the Great Recession, and then you can, if you follow it very closely, you can pick out that there's 8 recessions in agriculture during that same time period. Extremely volatile. This is due to the fact that weather and prices and all the things that make farming volatile, and markets and exports and everything like that that make returns to agriculture very, very volatile. But it's also a fact that agriculture can use cash accounting as opposed to accrual accounting. And they can shift around their expenses and their revenues quarter to quarter to write off the maximum amount. The old saying, what time is it when a farmer has to pay taxes? Time to get a new tax accountant. So that's one of the reasons it will always be more volatile. Let's turn our attention to where the jobs that are created. There is no volatility. Every year we report 41,000 jobs in the state in farming in the state of Idaho. It doesn't change. You can see the little blip in Idaho's the downward trend in Idaho is all in the recession, the Great Recession. I mean the COVID recession. You can see the downturn in employment. Food manufacturing is the same way. About 20,000, about half of what is employed directly on farms. Drought, it's always a big question this year. How did it affect agriculture? The mountain states show that are by far and away where farmers are expecting negative or significant negative effects on their operations from drought. But the lenders are not reporting the same thing. They have record low or very low loans that are on watch lists or classified lists. In other words, they don't report that farmers are having much financial problems. Farmers are saying they have a lot of woes. Bankers are saying they don't. Land sales about last year's data, 16,000 per acre in Western Washington. There's less than 100 sales in Western Idaho, and huge increases in per acre. So in 2022, what are we looking for? Drought hangover, inflation. You can't get labor, you can't get fertilizer, but the leading indicators, what I always look at for the health of agriculture, is land prices. If they're going up, farmers expect in the long term their returns to land are going to grow up. Equipment, you can't buy used tractors, and you can't buy some, especially with John Deere going strikes. You can't buy equipment. You can't even buy replacement parts for equipment. You can't get repaired on equipment. And the number of dairy cows is always going up. That means that the Dutch dairy farmers are expecting their industry to grow and the export strength. Dr. Rita is telling us we have record exports from the state of Idaho, and I just don't see anything but tailwinds on that one. We are feeding the world. The last few words about employment in the state. Just a few weeks before the COVID shutdown, we had the record low unemployment in the state. And now, less than a month later, we had the record high of 12%. We've shifted down around 2.8%, really close to the low that we've ever recorded in the state of Idaho. And we're one of the lowest states in the nation in unemployment rates. And personal income, this is what your taxes are based upon, personal income. And you can see the growth in personal income in the state of Idaho. That bright orange, it's all but one county up there that's bright orange in the state of Idaho. A lot of personal income growth in the county. And here's one of my little interpretations where I try to pretend like I'm an economist. And the green line is actual personal income in the state of Idaho, total personal income. And then I draw a line so it reflects the growth rate before the Great Recession, George Bush era. And then I draw it up to where it starts to reach the growth rate again that we witnessed in the Trump years. And it wasn't until the Trump years that we had the same growth rate in personal income until the Trump years. The Obama lack of recovery, it's called. But that integral, or that distance between the red line and the green line, is how much personal income that we lost during the state. Billions. Because we were not on a growth path. And then you can see that jagged growth escalation in the latter parts of the Trump years, and the recovery from the COVID and the COVID stimulus and the recovery in the economy. And it's on a whole new trajectory for personal income growth in the state. This is the big reason why we call Keith Bybee Santa Bybee or Easter Bunny Bybee, is because he can bring home the bucks. He can have record surpluses in our taxes. And that jagged upwards trend is because of this personal income growth. I'm sure you're going to hear more about it from our other presenters. And with that, I'll take any questions. And thank you so much for your attention.